Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a fellow Hollywood historian. Her name is Kat Lively. She is the host of Calling Old Hollywood, a brand new podcast that's been out for about, 9 months or something like that. And she's 10 years younger than me. She's 27. And she's an old Hollywood historian. I never fucking thought I would see the day when I would see a millennial who was a Hollywood historian ever. Because so many millennials these days don't fucking know about fucking Hollywood from 20, 30 years ago, let alone 60, 70, 80 years ago. So it's going to be fucking awesome to be interviewing Kat. She's interviewed my friend and frequent guest, Lori Jacobson. And she did a good interview with her, and I can't wait to have her on today. She's also an actress and a singer, and I'd like to find out about that as well, and it's going to be awesome. So yeah, here is my interview with Kat Lively.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Kat. How are you today?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's very hot over here in Reading, but other than that, it's great.
I imagine, man, it's no joke, summertime.
No, it's not, especially over here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time today. I discovered you about a month ago. Mike DeStasio had interviewed you on Real Talk with the Hollywood Kid, and I could not believe somebody 10 years younger than me was a Hollywood historian of old Hollywood, because the millennials these days, they don't fucking know anything about 20 or 30 years ago of Hollywood, let alone 70 or 80 years ago, you know?
Definitely. I'm, much appreciated. I'm so glad you found me.
Yes, and I was glad that you had interviewed Lori, and she's like, one of my biggest supporters in the world. And
she's incredible.
Yeah, she's amazing. And so, yeah, I was glad that I found someone, close to my age group who loves all the old stuff. So
definitely.
How did you begin loving old Hollywood movies and its history?
Basically, it was, so when I was a child, I was raised by my grandparents. Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, I didn't get the modern day stuff. I got, they raised me on kind of what they grew up with. And a lot of that was like, like Shirley Temple films and, the comedy of Rodney Dangerfield and like Richard Pryor and people like that, kind of like the pioneers. And something about that really resonated with me. And it's just it's been there all my life now. And it really kind of, how would you say, reignited or really just kind of like came up again within the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
When I lived in New York, and since then it's just been pretty steady.
Yeah. My introduction to old Hollywood movies, I'm 37, and when I was 4, my parents showed me The Wizard of Oz, and I became obsessed with it. And
yes,
we had the only nostalgic channel for movies we had in 1987 was TBS Superstation. And they showed all the MGM classics, Gone with the Wind and so forth. Then a year later, TNT was launched. I'm old enough to remember TNT like the first week it was on.
Yeah,
and
incredible.
That's where I became a Charlie Chaplin buff. They had like a Charlie Chaplin marathon one year during that time. And then we got Cinemax, and Cinemax was showing black and white classics from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s for a short time. And then by 91, they stopped. And then AMC was launched back when AMC was AMC and not, the over-commercialized crap that they show from the last 20 or 30 years now.
Right. No kidding.
There was no commercials. There was no interruptions, and they showed all the classics. and then they started having commercials and showing current stuff, and then TMC started, and that's like the only one left of nostalgic movies.
Right. And thank God that there is, still a network that is providing that on television, because now it's, even with technology nowadays, we're able to kind of go online and see these things, which is great. But yeah, there is a thing about the experience of television.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I worry about the future generations. They're still going to be not caring about the classics and the history. It seems like the only thing that they focus on relating to history is the racism,
Yeah. Understood with that. It's, certain things come and go and certain things stay, but, that was a big purpose of starting my own podcast and just trying to keep it alive and keep people listening and keep people or turn on new fans to it, or kids, teenagers, whoever's listening to it, and kind of give them that little kind of nudge to go check this stuff out, because it's important. These are the pioneers. They're the people who created these things. Without them, we wouldn't have what we do today.
Yeah, I was a big A&E biography guy back in the day.
Definitely. I hear that. I'm big on documentaries and biographies. we were talking about Lori. I was just watching a documentary on John Ritter the other day, and, these, like we said, these people, they're so important to remember.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Are you into the old noir films?
Of course, noir, silent film, into, Humphrey Bogart and all the noir stuff that he did, all of that. I'm a big fan of it, big fan.
Yeah, last fall, I interviewed this lady, and I would recommend her for you to talk to. Her name is Karen Hansberry. She has written a couple books about noir. She is a full-fledged expert. She's a middle-aged black lady from Chicago who just knows everything there is to know about noir. And we had a nice conversation for about an hour and a half talking about all the noirs. I was pulling obscure ones out of my ass, and she was just impressed with my knowledge of it.
It's incredible. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and she even recommended a couple to me that I watched, including this one with Edward G. Robinson called Scarlet Street.
Nice.
From 1945.
Fantastic.
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Definitely.
Do you
have a favorite classic film of all time?
Oh, God, I have several. I love...
I know, it's hard to pick just one, right?
Yeah. Okay, so, I'm a big... I love the Cagney and Bogart films. I love, The Public Enemy, White Heat, Angels with Dirty Faces, The Roaring Twenties. And then, getting into the Bogart stuff, I love The Big Sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I just interviewed the bookstore lady's son, not knowing that they were related, the other day. Former child actor Mason Reese, who did a ton of commercials in the 70s. Yeah, did not realize that was his mother, and I felt so stupid that I didn't realize that.
Oh, but you didn't know? You didn't know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. A couple months ago, I was talking to somebody about The Big Sleep, and I hadn't realized before, but, there was a female cab driver in that movie as well. And it's like that movie was way ahead of its time concerning feminism and showing women that they couldn't just be, housewives or lovers like Hollywood portrayed them during that time,
Right, absolutely. They did. They were daring. And more power to them. It was very innovative.
Mm-hmm. I also love Dark Passage, which takes place in San Francisco, where I'm from. Key Largo, To Have and Have Not, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the stuff, Bogey was amazing, but his films, the few films that he did do with Lauren Bacall, man, there was something so special about that, and obviously they were together in real life, they were in love and all of that. There's something about their chemistry on screen really transcended the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
What are your favorites?
I am a big, I guess, if I had to pick a favorite, East of Eden is definitely, I have a crazy, James Dean story, and, it's insane, and so that's definitely created a huge impact for me. And then I think my second might be the Bogey film, In a Lonely Place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that film. I just love the way it was shot, the cinematography, the plot, the acting, everything about that film is fantastic. And, Blood and Sand, Tyrone Power.
Oh, yeah.
Really just a few to name.
The first Blood and Sand with Rudy Valentino's not that bad either.
Absolutely. Have you been down here to Hollywood Forever Cemetery?
No, I've heard about it. It's like one on my it's on my bucket list to go to.
Absolutely, yeah. Rudolph Valentino, he's there. They've got they have the kind of myths and legends about the Lady in Black. The Lady in Black is since he died, it's like that tradition where this woman comes dressed in a black veil and dress and sits by his headstone, and they still do that to this day. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. What are your favorite overall classics like the ones you mentioned already? Of course, obviously are some of your passionate favorites, but are there any others?
Well, definitely. I guess classics. If you want to go Casablanca, Gone with the Wind. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. Jazz singer. Singing in the Rain's a big favorite. Love Singing in the Rain.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I get all emotional about all of it. The way that they acted back then. The movements, the sudden movements, the dictation, the way that they spoke, the way that they talked. I was just so fascinated by so much of that because there's so many things that you don't see like that today. It's completely different.
Yeah, I love Rebel Without a Cause. That's my favorite James Dean.
Rebel was great, fantastic. I had on an episode of my podcast, I had Lou Bracker. Lou Bracker was the best friend of James Dean up until he died.
Oh.
And he got to be on set of Rebel. Mm-hmm. And so he not every day, of course, but he'd come up a couple times, and there's a story he has where he talks about the bullet scene, where Jimmy goes, "I got the bullets," and he recounts this amazing story about being on the set, and it's just like, oh man, to have been there and to have experienced, there's so much history with James Dean, Natalie Wood, Sal Mineo, all incredible at their craft, and just, from what I've heard, wonderful people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
That movie has such a mythic aura around it that it's crazy how Dennis Hopper outlived all of them.
Yeah, no, did anyone see that coming?
I don't think anybody did.
It's crazy, yeah. The three, they really shined in that film, and on that very untimely demise it's kind of, it's very eerie, very sad, but nonetheless, an incredible film,
Yeah.
Nick Ray created, he was a strange guy, but he created some amazing films.
Mm-hmm.
For that, definitely. On that, too, it's like, Elia Kazan did East of Eden, but he also did, On the Waterfront and Splendor in the Grass and a lot of films, too. I think he's one of my favorite directors.
A Face in the Crowd?
What was that?
A Face in the Crowd?
Yeah.
With Andy Griffith?
Definitely.
Yeah. I also love a lot of Burt Lancaster movies. That guy was probably the first movie star that had his own production company, and it was through United Artists, which was kind of an independent studio, and they made films that quite possibly you couldn't get made at any other studios because they were so bold and groundbreaking. And he did, so many great movies like, Birdman of Alcatraz for them, The Young Savages, God, so many Sweet Smell of Success. I mean, just movies you couldn't get made anywhere else. And he even produced Marty with Ernest Borgnine.
Jeez, I know that. That's incredible.
Yeah. And of course, I love Jimmy Stewart.
Oh yeah, who doesn't? It's hard not to. You know what I mean? He had such a likable quality to him, where you felt like you could just sit down with him and have coffee. You know what I mean? That's how I always see Jimmy Stewart on screen, and anytime I've heard stories about him, I just thought, wow, yeah, what a guy, yeah. He's definitely one of my favorites too, no doubt. That one's very special.
The Philadelphia Story, Harvey, Anatomy of a Murder, and of course the Hitchcock movies he did with him. Vertigo. Oh yeah, that's probably my favorite Hitchcock movie. Vertigo.
Fantastic.
Rare Window.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Man
good
Who
one.
Knew Too Much. All of that stuff.
Rope, which has homosexual overtones.
Yeah. Some of the Western type stuff he did too was really good. Like Shenandoah, I really liked. He was just he was so diverse too. He went all across the board. He went from Hitchcock films, he did westerns, he did some like good-hearted kind of family, like The Wonderful Life. He did everything that he did. I feel like he really succeeded. Like he succeeded. He really excelled in getting that character to breathe off the screen. He was so good.
This Christmas season, I'm hoping to get his daughter Zuzu, from It's a Wonderful Life on here. I reached out to her last year, and I think the message went to her spam filter. So hopefully this year I'll try to get her. I think Lori knows her.
Totally. I hope that you do. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
what inspired your show?
Okay, so 5 years ago I had a car accident, and I spent 30 days in a coma.
Wow.
I was a drunken wreck for about 4 years leading up to that. I just was not motivated. I didn't know the business side of show business. I was actually quite ashamed of the fact that I was a movie buff, because I didn't meet too many people who were like me. I didn't know about the convention scene yet. There was a lot of shit that happened to me, like right after high school, that I couldn't get shit done and focus. So I had my accident 5 years ago, and I recovered, and I decided as soon as I got out of the hospital that I was going to pursue show business. I'd been doing stand-up comedy and open mic for about 10 years. I got back on stage every night for a year and a half, and then I moved over here to Reading because my mom and we'd been homeless since 2013. We lost everything because she was in a toxic relationship. And got up here, and within about 3 or 4 weeks, I started the podcast. I wanted to keep the cult movie alive. I had seen all these guys that they were doing that, but I didn't think that they were that good at what they were doing. I thought that I could do a better job because I'm actually passionate about 99% of what I talk about with my guests. I've actually seen almost everything. I do my research. I noticed a lot of guys that I listened to did not do their research,
Right.
And so I wanted to correct all of that, and I have. And I didn't think I was going to do any more than 10 episodes, but then it got to a point where it became addicting, and I was like, man, I can really book somebody for this show. And the first 24 episodes were absolutely horrible in terms of quality. I was trying to do what Mark Maron did. I was like pre-recording my show, but I was doing it on a dictation recorder, and then I would like record myself on camera and present the interview, and people could just barely hear them, And then I tried another experiment for about 10 shows where I was like putting the camera to the phone, and then I realized, oh shit, the person's number can be seen, so I had to go into the YouTube studio and blur out the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day it just happened. I put my recorder on top of the landline, and that's how the show was officially born. I keep those old shows on just so people can see me at humble beginnings of me not knowing what I was doing. But
right.
this is how I do it now and stuff. And I'm not sure I remember. I think around July, August of 18, I stopped presenting myself on camera. I was gaining weight, and I just didn't want to see myself anymore, so it's just been audio only ever since.
Yeah. Holy cow, what a story, man. You got to come on my podcast and talk about this stuff. This is inspiring stuff, man. So, but good for you for, like, doing this and for going as far as you have with it. That's incredible.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to. I never get invited, and I would love to. But
Yeah.
I was reading, though, in your bio that you're an actress and singer and songwriter.
Yes.
And that all started at the age of 8?
So I began writing poetry when I was about 8 years old, and it was just kind of something I liked to do. And, my mother, she noticed that I had this interest and, in the arts and things like that. And I was always singing around the house, so she put me in vocal lessons, and then later on I just had so much energy, and so she put me in acting classes, and that's where a lot of it really, really fostered, and it really, this like deep love of performing happened. And so for a couple of years I was in acting classes and vocal lessons and writing, but then when I was 11, my brother passed away, and then when I was 12, my mother passed away. And so it was both of them within 1 year and 1 month of each other. And after that, I just basically for like the next 8 or 9 years after that, it was kind of like a blur, just like tragedy and moving around, and there's a lot of stuff that happened. And so all of that really took a back seat, and I never got to, to get better at any of those things. And so it took from, I guess it was about, I want to say, like 11 years old to 21 years old, going through all that stuff. I finally moved back to California, where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
and I moved to Los Angeles to kind of pick up where I left off so many years ago, but, trying to do it on a more professional level. So I began performing and acting and things like that, and it's gone really, really well. And, I've been very, fortunate and very humbled by the experiences I've had and the influences and the people that I've had the opportunity to meet. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I'd do all of it at such an age, but I guess sometimes, it's really like a do or die thing, because we all have a story and we all have these things that happen to us, but it's like what we do with it, like you were talking about, with your show and everything. It's like, things, really difficult, hard things happen, but how do you conduct yourself and how you react to them and what you do after that is, it's builds you, it makes you who you are. And so I'm happy to be here today and to be doing what I'm doing.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's what I went through. So my senior year in high school, I wanted to move to Los Angeles, and I wanted to join the Groundlings and do sketch and improv comedy. I had done some improv in high school drama, and it was really hard, but there was a part of me that wanted to do it as hard as it was. Because I was a big Saturday Night Live guy. I always was from the time I was a little kid. I was always performing and doing sketches and stuff for the family growing up, and so that's what I wanted to do. But I had to take care of my grandmother for 9 months after I graduated, and she died in February of 2002. She was never the same again after 9/11 happened. Oh my God, that affected the whole world. But she was just mortified by that,
Yeah,
And
understandable.
I mean, she wasn't from New York, and I'm sure she'd been there at least once in her life, but it was devastating to her. And then from there, I would lose a relative a year, all the way up until the present and stuff. And she was the first close relative I had ever lost. I had lost one aunt who died about 7 years before that I never knew. If I did meet her, it was probably before I was old enough to speak. And so it really affected me, and it set a lot of stuff that I went through. But as soon as the funeral was over, I went to go live with my dad for about 3 months, and then I came back. My mom and I got an apartment, and I lived across the street from a mom and pop video store, and I got reacquainted with old cult classic movies that I grew up watching, and that really set the tone for my podcast many years later, because I don't think if that had happened, I probably wouldn't be doing the podcast, because it refreshed my memory, and I've told so many people that I've interviewed from the particular movies I watched during that period how much they got me through a dark time, and that I thank them for entertaining me.
Definitely. I mean, and there's something to be said about that. It's the things that are there when we need them most, that can bring a smile to our faces, or inspire us, or just kind of like keep us going a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those things are so important. I mean, it's just, I guess, what can you say? Art is life. It really is. It really is. These films, this music, the culture, all the things. It's inspiring, very motivating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I've seen you've appeared on Veep and the upcoming Perry Mason reboot, which a friend of mine was also on there, Stephanie Hodge.
Yes, okay, definitely.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, do you know when that's going to air?
I think the first two have aired. It's via HBO.
Mm-hmm.
So the first two, but they're doing it every week. So it's like a new episode. I want to say it's every Sunday that the new episodes are happening.
Okay.
And that, that was just the coolest experience for me. That was probably my favorite so far that I've worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, the authentic, 1930s clothes, and it felt like you were kind of going in, you're time traveling every morning, every day, going back to this stuff. And everyone, the actors, everyone was just so kind and humble, and that's something that, it's either hit or miss when you're on a set with big actors. You don't know how they're going to be. Mm-hmm. And so this was a very humbling, great experience.
So they're doing...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. They're doing the old style version of Perry Mason, like the old one did.
It's a darker twist kind of take on the old one. So it is a revival, and it is Perry Mason, but it's just kind of in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just but it's still, it's fantastic.
Yeah, nothing that's being revived is ever going to be like the original, but that's good that they're incorporating the old elements. That's good.
Absolutely. And Matt Race, who plays Perry, does a phenomenal job. He was perfect for that role. So I'm very happy for him. He's a great actor, and I'll say that the casting was spot on. Yeah,
you got John Lithgow.
John Lithgow, Robert Patrick. There were a few people on there too who I didn't know at first was going to be on, and I went, oh my gosh. Stephen Root. Yeah. He's one of my favorite character actors. He's just, man, he's incredible. He's one of those people I think is severely underrated, but also he is highly respected in the industry. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's done so much. And he was a super, super nice guy. And that was really cool. You know, those were cool experiences. They have a lot of things towards the end, which was when I was working on it, and yeah, couldn't have asked for more. Couldn't have asked for better people, better casting, better performances. They really brought it.
Yeah, and Robert Downey Jr. is producing it.
Yep. Yeah, good old RDJ.
Yeah.
He's I'm glad that they did this. You know, I'm really glad, and it's even just with these kind of revivals in general, or these spotlights. Like I know a lot. Like last year, Film Judy came out, and then they were doing just a lot of kind of resurgence of old Hollywood. You know, the show Hollywood came out on Netflix a couple months ago, and that was based in old Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I'm finding this, you know, this theme is like coming back, yeah. and I'm, you know, whether the show is like hit or miss or whatever it is, the fact that it takes place in the time that it does alone is, I think, very inspiring, and I think it's going to turn some people on to go, oh, old Hollywood, like, let me look into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And I noticed one of the directors is Timothy Van Patten.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed his sister-in-law, Nancy Vallon, who was on Baywatch.
Nice. Yeah, Tim Van Patten, he did a lot of cool stuff. Black Mirror, Boardwalk Empire, stuff like that. Game of Thrones.
Rock and Roll High School.
Yes, definitely. So good.
One of my favorites. Yeah. What kind of music do you play?
I play a lot of. I used to play a lot more kind of like punk rock and roll type genre, and now I've crossed over into more of a. I want to say like how would I put it? More of like a songwriter, kind of balladeer type. I guess like a Lana Del Rey with some, I don't know, with some jazz influence or something like that. Really heartfelt kind of narrative stuff. A lot of the new songs that I'm working on, I'm tying old Hollywood into. Like I have a song about Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. I have a song about James Dean. I have, you know, and just, you know, I'm working on some stuff right now that's also tied into different places in old Hollywood, and you know, I'm like giving it a modern take, but I'm writing about these historical figures and people and places, and because I just think it's, you know, it's that important to keep it alive. So it's a fun little journey, like tying it all in. I didn't plan for it. It just kind of started happening, and then I'm just kind of going along for the ride, you know?
Yeah. I see that you've shared the same stage as Green Day. Yes,
I performed with them 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite the experience for me. Growing up, they were the band that inspired me to want to play guitar and want to just, you know, play music in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, and you know, when my mother passed away and my brother and all of that was happening, they were the band that I really found comfort in listening to. So I do credit them to getting me through a lot of difficult times in my life.
Yeah.
And, you know, so years and years later, performing with them and doing that was really full circle. It was like, wow, you know, I couldn't believe it was real. It took me a few months to really process, you know, because it's like, that was my biggest dream. That was my biggest, you know, people would ask me, like, you know, so as a musician, what's your biggest goal? Who do you want to perform with? What do you want to do in music? And that was it for me. You know, I'm like, if I can play music, even like a single song, whatever it is, if I can do that with the people who inspired me to begin this journey in the first place, then I will feel I could die happy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very cool to have been able to do that.
Yeah, I'm a big Green Day fan. You know, they're from the Bay Area like I am, and I've heard just how wild their shows can be. I'd never seen them live. I almost did once. They played at Lollapalooza one year when I was like 13, 14, something like that. I think that may have been the same Lollapalooza that the Ramones did their last tour on.
Man, that's amazing. amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. They play a lot of like little club bar shows too in the Bay Area.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like a hush hush kind of thing, and I've seen quite a few of those performances too, just at little places. You know what I mean? I'll have to let you know the next time they do that. Of course, we're in quarantine right now, but
yeah.
I'll bet they'll get back to it as soon as possible.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, the bands there that make it, they're loyal to the little club shows. Huey Lewis and the News was like that. Even though the Rolling Stones are English, they do those unannounced club shows throughout their careers. And there's something about being a bar band that when you actually make it in the industry, you stay loyal to it. I don't know what it is, but there's no greater feeling than playing a dive bar that they feel, you know?
Yeah, and it is true. I mean, you know, stadiums and big venues and things like that are really cool, but I think it's so special to do those small shows and to have your, like, you know, genuine, really cool fans come out and support that and be able to have that experience, because that's something that people just, they're never going to forget it. You know what I mean? It's one thing, and it's special to see your favorite band, you know, performing at huge places, but the intimacy of a small club and a small bar and stuff, you can't replicate that experience. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one thing I read that struck me in your bio is that you briefly lived in James Dean's old apartment and you played music with Alan Merrill.
I did. Okay, so it was incredible. I mean, this is where old Hollywood really came back to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it took a back seat for a while.
Yeah.
That I had as a kid. And it's a long story, but yeah, long story short, I ended up intentionally on the steps of his apartment one day when I was on tour in New York, and just such a crazy story. I can't even go. I ended up becoming friends with the person who lived there, and when I moved to New York a couple months later, they went out of town for a while, and so like I stayed there and I watched their cat and stuff like that. But I had it was one of those special experiences because there's a rooftop in that apartment. There's a door to the roof, and a lot of people don't know about it. And that is where Jimmy, James Dean, Jimmy, I call him Jimmy, would go and basically create his character. Like Cal from East of Eden, that rooftop is where he was rehearsing his lines, and a lot of his early television appearances before the film, he would go up there and he would rehearse. So here I am, I'm 25 years old, and I'm playing music with Alan Merrill every night, and not every night, but like once a week we played a few shows together, and I'm playing these shows with him, and I'm coming back every night to this apartment, and I'm sitting on the roof knowing that, this is where Jimmy was, and it was just very inspiring and very, very special to be there. I wrote a lot of songs and created a lot of art, and was thoroughly inspired every time I stepped foot in there. There's definitely an energy when you walk into that apartment that is, I don't even have words, but there's something very special there that I've never felt anywhere else. I get goosebumps talking about it. It was, it's just a very special place, and I am so happy that my friend still, he's lived there since about the 70s, and he is one of the most genuine, cool people, and he, is very laid back and relaxed about, if fans come up and they want to see the apartment, he'll show it to them. He definitely honors his legacy, Jimmy's legacy. So I'm so, thrilled for the time that I did have there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, too, Alan Morrill performed I Love Rock and Roll with the Arrows before Joan Jett and the Blackhearts did.
Yes. So Alan, he wrote the song, and he was a pop star in Japan. You know, during his youth, his mother is a legendary jazz musician, Helen Merrill. She's still alive. I got put on some shows with him. It's a funny thing because even before I went to New York, it was a few years before I traveled or lived in New York that Alan and I were friends on social media. And so we would talk, and he would give me a lot of advice about life, and, you know, unwarranted. I never asked for it. He just kind of carved himself a place in my life, and I was so grateful, you know, absolutely. I knew that our friendship was very special. And so here's, you know, a few years later, I'm being put on shows during my first tour. And so the first time I ever performed, I was opening for Alan at the Sidewalk Cafe in New York. And it was as magical as I thought it would be. And he was a very dear friend. He just passed away late March of this year from COVID, from the virus. And I still can't wrap my head around it because he was like a second dad to me. You know, even a few days before he passed away, he texted me, you know, stay safe and stay away from crowds and everything like that. And that's just the way that he was up until the end. You know, he cared, and he was always looking out. And that's just the kind of guy he was to everyone. And he was so humble and so nice. And I got to thank, you know, the booker, David Tanner, who's a dear friend, for putting me on those shows with him. Man, I will never forget that time in my life. And I knew in the moment that how special it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I definitely treated it like that. I knew it was a very special time to be living where I was and to be performing music and to have that time at James Dean's apartment, and just all of it was like a dream. It really was.
Yeah. When I found out, I was devastated because to me, he'll always be Casey Sparks on Encyclopedia Brown.
Yes. Alan, man, he did so much, you know, from TV to music to... He was just in a film, too, called Spirit Riser with Dylan Mars Greenberg.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's out yet, but Cherie Curry was in it, and there was a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am, one of the things, too, I am so glad that he was the second guest on my podcast, my Old Hollywood podcast. And so when he passed, I was at least so very grateful that we did an episode together, because we'll always have that audio.
Yeah.
And, man, I just thank God thank God we did that, you know?
Yeah. 3 guests of mine have died. This guy named Jerry McCarty, who hosted a podcast called Rick's Martini Bar. He's a friend of my friend Kelly Maroney, who was his co-host on that show. And he died a month after I interviewed him of cancer. His voice was very scratchy, and I wasn't aware he had cancer until he died. I was wondering why his voice was scratchy. So he died, and then I interviewed James Drury, who played the Virginian, and Richard Hurd, the great character actor, both 2 weeks before they died. Lori got me Richard Hurd, and it's more like he interviewed me. He was asking me all sorts of questions, and by the time everything was done and stuff, he was exhausted, and I couldn't get into certain things like Seinfeld with him, and I was pretty upset about that. But I'm glad I got to interview him.
That's incredible. You know, I don't know, I'm one of those fatalistic people who would think things happen for a reason, and timing is everything, and it says something, you know what I mean? And it's wonderful that, you know, there are people like us who are doing these shows and interviewing these people because the truth is, old Hollywood, every year that passes is another year that we get away from that time. And it's so important while these people are still here to speak with them and to document these things, because after they're gone, that's what will be left is these documentations of their life and their stories. And if you can get it in their own words, then, that's amazing. It's incredible.
I know, and I even tell certain people that too. The ones who turn me down, I just say, like, don't you want the world to know, what was in your soul, what was in your heart, because we could all die tomorrow, I mean, don't you want everyone?
Yeah.
Don't you want people to know it, right? And they're usually like, no, they want their work to like speak for themselves, certain people, And I'll tell you too that there's a couple people that I was going to interview that died earlier this year as well. Diane Thorne, she was a adult film actress in the 70s, and she had done this horror movie that was kind of inspired by the Manson family. It was called Blood Sabbath, with Tony Geary, who's best known as Luke Spencer on General Hospital. He's a traveling hippie who meets this girl played by a frequent guest of mine who's a good friend, Susan DeManti. And they have a run-in with this cult that Diane Thorne is the leader of. And it's an old hippie horror film. There was a bunch of them. After Night of the Living Dead came out, it was hard for people to follow that and try to come up with something original in horror. So everyone was doing Manson family style horror movies.
Right.
There was one called I Drink Your Blood with Lynn Lowry. I've interviewed an actress from that movie. And Blood Sabbath and a bunch of others, and then The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, respectively, changed horror forever within a year apart.
Jeez, yeah. That's insane. Quite wild. There's that thing, too, where it's kind of crazy. I talked about the Manson films, and it's there's certain things that never go away. You know what I mean? They just kind of get adapted into new versions. Going back from like you were talking about with like Blood Sabbath now into 2020, or 2019 Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like Tarantino.
Right.
It's so crazy how we always adapt it. And my friend, my dear friend, John Roker, he's a filmmaker, absolutely brilliant man. He created this very obscure and very lewd claymation called Live Freaky, Die Freaky. And
I like that.
Is about Charles Manson and the followers. But here's the thing is, okay, you're talking about Green Day. Lee Joe Armstrong is the voice of Charles Manson.
Yeah.
And then you've got everyone from Green Day, Blink-182, you've got Kelly Osbourne, you've got my dear friend Kim Chi, who is in the Distillers, you've got John Doe from X. There's like all of these, rock stars who are playing these obscure, and I mean lewd, the things that the dialogue is like X-rated easily. It's the film's been banned in a lot of places. You can find it online though and purchase it. It's absolutely amazing. So talking about like Manson, it's always that like adaptation, But his was kind of cool. John's was amazing because it wasn't glorifying it. It was more saying, don't follow people. Don't just blindly follow, and don't get into cults, kids. So in a very artsy way. So you got to check that out. Any listeners too? I know there's so many people on that Manson thing where it's like it's interesting, but it's also just like wow, like there's so many films about it. I guarantee you haven't seen one like that.
Yeah, no, I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I just interviewed Gary Kent, who was the stuntman that Brad Pitt plays in the movie, and he was the consultant on the movie, and he had lunch meetings with Tarantino and told him, what happened and stuff. He was doing a Western at Spawn Ranch, and Manson was very disruptive during it. And so he put the air out in his tires, and he told Manson, fix it, and he said, fuck you, and so he hit him. And then Manson gave in, and he did fix the tires, and that was that. And so that it was put in the movie.
Jeez, that's pretty wild. That is wild, but that's incredible. Do you think that's your favorite kind of like true crime, famous crime that's happened in Hollywood?
I would say so, yeah, because it was just an accidental, culture. It was just an accidental pop culture moment. It was just something that was insane. And it was a needless killing that happened, and everyone in Hollywood freaked out when it happened.
It's insane. And I remember the day that Charles Manson died. It was, I think I felt the world's sigh relief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was kind of like the world was breathing again or something. It was just this weird, like the witch is dead kind of
Yeah.
It's like a very Wizard of Oz kind of thing going on there. It was so funny. But it was it was crazy. I don't think we thought we'd see the day, really. I think he thought he'd live forever too.
Yeah, probably. There was a guy that was on Joe Rogan's podcast a few months ago, and I had seen him on this other guy, David Feldman's podcast, about a year ago. He wrote this book from 20 years of research, and he found out that Manson, and so many people don't believe him, but he found out that Manson was an FBI experiment.
Oh my God.
He had been in jail his whole life, from being a prostitute's son and doing all these things like burning down his school and what have you. And they took him and they made him part of this LSD experiment. They wanted him to, trip off of LSD, and what he ended up doing was starting that cult,
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know that was going to happen, but they saw the effects of it.
Do you think it's true?
You never know. I have seen so much corrupt bullshit the last 5 years of my life. I saw corrupt bullshit in the hospital recovering from my accident. I've seen a lot of corrupt shit on this podcast with certain people. I've seen people, there's people who have lied to me, not knowing that I listened to other podcasts and heard them tell, the opposite of what they told me and stuff. So it's quite possible that the experiment happened.
Wow. That's pretty wild. I mean, it's not that far-fetched when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is insane, yeah. And anything could have happened, But that time in Hollywood was amazing because all the musicians and all the movie stars knew each other, and they hung out on the Sunset Strip. This one... yeah.
Huge.
This one friend of mine who's a frequent guest, and you should have her on your show. She knows a lot about old Hollywood. Her name is Terry Bolo. She's one of the founding members of the Groundlings. She used to hang out in all the clubs on the Sunset Strip. Her uncle was Ken Vassie, a folk singer who used to play with John Denver and the Byrds and so many people. And he'd hang around Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, and all these big names on the Sunset Strips, playing at Ledbetter's Folk Club, which later became the Comedy Store in Westwood, up until the late 80s, and all these different places. And yeah, she's got a lot of great stories. And she was she worked at, have you ever heard of Dearly Departed Tours?
Of course.
She worked behind the counter there for the last 7 years or so until it just got closed down.
They just closed.
Yes.
I'm so sad about that. Yeah, Scott Michaels, man. Talk about kind of like building something out of passion.
I'm trying to get Scott on. He's going through an awful lot. I don't even think he's read my messages, but Terry has told me that he's gone through a lot. in the last year or so. So I'm waiting to get him on and stuff. But yeah, I want to talk about all that stuff. I got to visit that place twice before it closed, and the first time I got some post-traumatic stress disorder from my accident when I saw Jane Mansfield's car.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that when you said PTSD. Yeah, what a sight, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's just a tragic story, and it's crazy how he acquired that, and how he acquired everything. I mean, what a collection.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy, you know. But also, you know, it's like what he's been doing, you know, kind of keeping it alive, so to speak, you know, in different ways, in different niches. You know, his is like, you know, more like the morbid kind of like history of side of things, which is totally cool too. I mean, we just have to keep everything alive. It's a shame that they closed. It is, because they were amazing. Right across the street from the cemetery too, from Hollywood Forever.
Yeah, and the second time I got to go was last September, and I got to show my best friend the place. And I'm bummed I never got to do it. I mean, they are going to continue doing the tour part of it, but it's just not the same without that shop, you know?
Absolutely. I wonder, my thoughts, I'm like, where are they going to put everything? You know what I mean? Like her car and just all, I just wonder where all that, is it in a warehouse, or is it, you know, I don't know, wonder about that stuff.
If I get to talk to Scott, then I'll ask him. Maybe he's going to do it. Maybe he's going to do it. Maybe he's going to do an auction or something, or maybe he's going to keep it. Who knows?
I would keep it. I don't know. Unless you had to sell it, I would totally. I mean, that's history, you know. But it's some crazy history. You never know. I don't know if I would want Jane Mansfield's car in my house.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he's got maybe he's got a garage. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
So
pretty wild.
So how did you come up with Calling Old Hollywood?
Calling Old Hollywood was honestly an impulse. It was. I had been thinking about, for a couple months, I had been thinking about some way to contribute to Old Hollywood, following my very first trip to Indiana, to Fairmount, James Dean's hometown. I left that place after the festival in September, and all I could think about was, man, I need to do something. I need to contribute. I just felt like this insatiable need to help, even if just in some small ways, to keep Old Hollywood relevant, because it was so important. And so, one day I was just kind of sitting there, and I got the idea for a podcast. And I'd never done a podcast before. I'd never done like a radio thing before. I'd never done any of that. And I didn't know how either. Mm-hmm. But that was it was like a light bulb just came on, and I thought, oh, I could totally do that. You know, I'm like, I have some really interesting people in my life, and I'm sure they'd love to come on the show and talk about those things. And yeah, that would be incredible. So it took me a few weeks to get it all together, and I did a lot of research and did a lot of homework on how to start a podcast, and then it took me a little bit to decide on the name. That was it. And when I began it, I fully understood what I was getting into, and I just thought, if I'm going to do this, I have to stay committed to it. You know what I mean? Because some people, they get excited about something for a short time, and then they just get bored of it.
Yeah.
And I promised myself, I said, if I start this, I got to go with it. I got to keep going with it. I can't stop. So that was it. I think I've only missed a few episodes, but the first episode aired in, was it like the last week of December or the first week of January? So I've been going with it, since then, and have only missed a couple weeks. It's weekly with new guests every week. I've been very fortunate and very grateful to have some of the people that I've had on, and some people I just never dreamed I would, that have taken their time to share their stories and experiences. Very, very humble, very grateful.
Yeah, I had reached out to Lori because I remember seeing her interviewed on a bunch of True Hollywood Stories back in the day, and I kind of forgot about her until I was watching an old one, and I reached out to her. I didn't even know that she was married to John Provost, and she managed all the old child actors from his generation. So we did an interview, and we talked about the Comedy Store the entire time because I'm a big Comedy Store buff because I did stand up for 10 years in the Bay Area.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that, too. I'm a big comedy fan. But anyway, keep going.
So we talked about the Comedy Store, right? And I let her know in advance that I swear a lot, and I gave her permission to swear. And she's like, oh, we're going to be friends after this because swearing is one of my favorite things to do. So we had a great time for about 75 minutes or something. And she came back on about 3 or 4 months later to talk about other stuff. And then next thing I know, she's asking me if I want to talk to this person, that person. And I said, sure. And I couldn't believe it. She got me Beverly Washburn. She got me Sharon from the Mouseketeers. She got me, oh my God, Richard Hurd, like I mentioned before, quite a few people. And my mom and I, we went to a convention last year, and she was there, and she told my mother, she said, I believe in your son so much. That's
incredible.
He is great, you know. And then I interviewed Eric Roberts' wife, who they're both close friends of Lori's, and they were there too. And she gave my mother the biggest compliment about me. She said he talks so respectfully to women, yet he tells them dirty jokes and sex stories, and for that, and for that, he's a gem in my book.
That's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, and she would know. You know what I mean? She's met them all. She's known them all. Mm-hmm. She is a total gem herself. Absolutely incredible. That is amazing.
Yeah, I'm just so damn lucky there, you know. Yeah. And oh my God, I interviewed Eddie Munster, right?
Yes.
He was a jerk to me, I'll be honest.
Oh, man.
And I know if I had booked that interview through Lori, he would have been nicer to me. But I didn't know that they were that close and stuff, and so I kind of regretted later not booking it through her. But he was a real jerk to me. I remember I called him at the time that I was supposed to. He was driving through snow, and he was like screaming at me on the phone. And then he gives the phone to his wife, and she was a total biatch to me too. And she said, call him at this time instead. And then I did. And he was just, not very engaging, not very responsive. And he, in his bio, it said that, he had a car accident too that was alcohol related, just like mine. I tried to relate to him through that, and he just didn't, want to engage in it. And it was quite unfortunate,
Yeah.
He's one of a handful of jerks I've interviewed. I've interviewed about 98% of wonderful people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear you on that one. It's you never know what people will be. You love their art and you love what they create, but it's one of those things where we have to separate the art from the artist, because so often, people, when they see a character or they see a musician or someone who inspires them or who's doing something, it's easy to think that that's how they are or who they are, and then you find out that they're completely different, which can either be very disheartening or it can be very humbling, when you find out that they aren't nice. And so those good experiences are something to hold on to, definitely. And, everything else, whatever.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of you just go with it, going with it. I'm sorry you had that experience.
Oh, it's okay. Like I said, it's only one of a handful. And I just, I'm glad that I got the chance, though. I would love to interview Marilyn Pat Priest. I don't know how to get in touch with her, though. But I listened to the interview you did with BB Hansen.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There was one thing that was not mentioned, and I was hoping it was going to be mentioned. Was she a little girl in Village of the Damned?
I don't know. Was she?
Because she has a picture. She has a picture of a little girl that looks like it could possibly be her from that movie, and a couple of the boys on her website and on her Facebook page. And I always wanted to know, is that her?
Oh my gosh, that's so. I'll ask her. I'll send her a message and ask her. She, yeah. Now I'm wondering.
Yeah, because it's the 60th anniversary, and during the month of October, I do like a nonstop marathon of interviewing horror people for Halloween. This is going to be the third year I do it, and every year it's fucking insane. I do like 3 or 4 interviews a day, like the entire 31 days. It's insane.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and so if she was, I wouldn't mind having her on to talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm trying to look. I'm like going to look it up when we get off the phone. Figure this out. But she's amazing in just her whole life, and everything that she has done has been, wow. Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Oh, I mean, I would interview her in general, but if she was that little girl in Village of the Damned, that would be, oh my God, so awesome to talk to her.
Incredible.
Have you had any trouble getting anybody on your show?
There's always those, like, I have like big goals of who I would like to have on my show. Mm-hmm. And it's, like rejections come here and there when, if I reach out to people, like, hey, would you, some people just aren't in the mood, or they just don't want to, or whatever. And, that's okay. But, for the most part, it's been pretty good. I'm just kind of grateful to have, like, if I reach out and they want to do it, I'm like, oh, that's a win for me, and just like a really cool experience. There were some that, I never expected, like Tyrone Power Jr. I had no idea that he would be a guest. You know what I mean? Like, it's really cool how it happens sometimes, where you just, people kind of refer somebody, or they, hey, this person would be great, and turns out there's somebody that you've loved since you were a kid, things like that. So those are really special moments, and I'm very humbled and very grateful for them. So whoever, comes on in the future, I'm totally for.
Well, don't you mean Tyrone Power the Third?
It's, the whole family. But, I mean, his, like, legal name was Tyrone Power Jr.
Oh, okay.
He was, like, his son, yeah. But obviously he never knew his father because he died before he was born. But that's such a tragic story.
Oh,
Her whole family was involved in the film industry for years and years and years.
I just interviewed Bill Haley Jr.
Amazing.
He had a lot of resentment towards his father for most of his life, and then it got to a point where he started to embrace the fact that his father invented rock and roll, and so he formed his version of the Comets, and he toured with them up until COVID. And he just came out with a book about his father's life. His half brother had written a book back in the 80s about him. I think that was more of like a Mommy Dearest type of book, though. But this one is a lot more affectionate.
Yeah. These life stories are. I just started a brand new podcast called This Time with Cat Lively, and it's geared more towards all of that, like the hardships and the things that people have gone through, like you were just describing, and how people kind of healed from it or processed it, and how they overcame it to continue chasing their dreams and who they are today. It's everything. It's like a man, is a sum total of his experiences. Like, we are made from, we're refined, I should say, from our experiences, but we don't have to be our experiences, you know, like we are not our past and things like that. So it's really cool to see how people took that and transformed with it. You know, things could have been very different for many.
Yeah. God, if I could, okay, so, like, I have a list of people who I would love to interview that I've been trying to get. Oh, God, there's so many. I would love to interview Howard Sherman, who played Bub in Day of the Dead. I would love to, I've been trying to get Melanie Chardoff for a long time. I loved her on Parker Lewis Can't Lose. I'm trying to get her. The one that I would really love is Ileana Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's a total Hollywood movie historian. She's got a great podcast. I liked it a little bit better when it was called I Blame Dennis Hopper, but now it's called The Film Scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her sidekick on that version of the podcast follows me on Facebook, and we're Facebook friends, Tamara Berg. And I've been trying to get her on the show, but she's very shy. And I would love to have Ileana and talk to her about old Hollywood movies, because, you know, her grandfather's Melvin Douglas.
Right.
You know.
Yes. Have you tried to reach out to her?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I talked to, I think it was her publicist or something, and he, like, asked me how many followers I had. And
right.
at that time, I wasn't lying, but now I am.
Yes.
And so I never heard back and stuff. But I do know she has another book coming out, and when it does, then I'll reach out again and make up a number.
Yeah, no doubt. Crazy how that works now with all of that stuff, where it's got to be like,
stupid.
You know, how many followers or how much, you know.
It's stupid.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's stupid. But yeah, so talking about comedy, like who'd you like growing up in comedy?
That, man, comedy, I never, you know, I'm not a comedian, and I, you know, haven't, but I love comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the Comedy Store a lot, or like the Laugh Factory or the Improv on Melrose. I have, you know, I love comedy. I was just a dear friend of mine who's going to be on my other podcast this time with Cat Lively. His father created the television show 8 Simple Rules for My Teenage Daughter that John Ritter was in before he passed. We just did that episode. But like that, I think that was the first for me, John Ritter. And I know Lori knew John, and it was like this whole kind of like connection thing. When I was a kid, you know, I mean, I grew up, like I was saying, like my parents raised me on like Rodney Dangerfield, Richard Gere, and comedians like that. But I remember personally coming home from school one day, and I maybe was like 8 or 9 years old or something. I came home from school, and Three's Company was on TV. And, you know, when I say I was like in elementary school and I was a kid and Three's Company was on, I'm talking about like 2003. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely not the 70s when it was like new. But and there was something about it. And there was something about John specifically, and I couldn't name it. It was everything about it, and I just totally fell in love. John Ritter was my first crush ever. You know, that character Jack Tripper kind of set the way for me. So from that, though, I mean, I always loved Saturday Night Live. I'm a big fan of David Spade. I worked on his television show on Comedy Central, Lights Out with David Spade, before the quarantine, before it got canceled. I was just doing crew work on that set. I wasn't on it or anything. But David's one of the nicest, most humble, down to earth people you could ever meet. Very, very sweet man. People like that, like John Ritter, David Spade. You know, one of my very, very favorites. I'm on a kick right now. I don't know if you've heard of him, Pete Holmes.
Oh, I know who he is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Pete Holmes is another one. You know, like we're talking like modern comedy. Love Pete Holmes so much. You know, Bobby Lee, lots of people. just think that, and I still can't even place it, you know what I mean? Because I'm not a comic. I'm not, but I do love humor. I love to laugh, and I love watching comedians do stand-up, like genuinely just kind of going and hanging at the Comedy Store and, you know, watching. It's such an experience, and it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of guts for someone to get on a stage with the material that they've written and try to make a room full of people laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's ballsy. It's very brave. So, man, I just love comedy.
Yeah, I was, you know, in the Saturday Night Live. I was into Second City. I loved Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay and Richard Jeni and all these edgy comedians, Bobcat Goldthwait when I was a kid. And how I got into stand-up was I have a friend that I reconnected with. I hadn't seen since middle school, and he wanted to go into stand-up. And we both had wanted to go together, but we just didn't know how and where to go because we're living in San Mateo County. And at that time, there were no open mics. There was no comedy boom during these years that we reconnected, which was in 2002. In 2006, I had just found out that I had to lose weight. My cholesterol was attacking my heart, and I needed to change my lifestyle. So I had to go on this diet. And then I ran into him, and he said to me, "Hey, I found this open mic in San Francisco. They're doing it tonight. It's a Brainwash. It's called the Brainwash Cafe. It's a half laundromat, half bar and grill place that has an open mic night. Let's go tonight." And I'm like, "Are you crazy? What are we gonna say tonight?" And he's like, "I will buy us a notepad and we will write on the train." And I reluctantly said yes. So I went home, took a quick shower, changed my clothes, and we went. All I could think of was a rant about Katie Holmes marrying Tom Cruise. That was the only thing I could think of. And then I did a bunch of jokes from a comedian I liked named Bob Zaney, who I've had on the show, and he was very flattered that I did his material for the first time I went on stage. And so I go up there. I'm the last comedian of the night. There's 2 black ladies there left. Everyone's gone at the end of the night. And I got laughs with Bob Zaney's material, but then my rant made the ladies walk out and leave. But I got this kind of orgasmic sensation of like, I like doing this and this is what I want to do. So I kept doing it. It got me through my diet. I wasn't thinking about food anymore. I was thinking about jokes constantly. And I did it, you know, for 10 years. There was periods where I stopped because of alcoholism and stupidity and everything. And then after I moved up here in the spring of 17, the Me Too movement happened about 6 months later. And this female comedian that I was an acquaintance with before I left, she did a false Me Too accusation that got me kind of banned from doing stand-up in the Bay Area. And I thought it was a prank from a guy that I was rivals with, but then I just found out a few months ago that it really did happen. And this woman is insane, and she's got about 10 or 15,000 more followers on Twitter than I do. It's scary. It's really scary. Yeah. And so, you know, I just ignore it and everything because I'm actually, you know, attempting to do something with my life and do things, and she's, you know, back there in the Bay Area just being stupid and making videos where she's making all these incoherent ramblings and stuff. So I don't let it bother me.
People got too much time on their hands.
Yeah, exactly. So
Definitely.
Definitely. If I ever do go back to stand up, it'll be in LA after COVID and everything. But I have other areas. I want to be the biggest horror host that has ever lived.
Yeah.
Go
on with it.
I have this persona, Tommy Throwback Kovac. He's a fanboy stuck in the 80s, and he likes to tell dirty jokes to women. And because he's stuck in the 80s, he's got that 80s mentality of, like, you know, getting away with misogynistic humor and all that stuff, you know. And I've been very lucky. I haven't offended any of the women that I've had on the podcast, really, you know.
Totally.
And they get the persona and everything, you know, and they know that I'm a gentleman, you know. Case in point, Eric Roberts' wife Eliza and Lori, you know.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think it would be a great persona for a horror show, you know. And I tried to make a pilot last year, and then my quote unquote mentor, who I no longer talk to anymore in stand up, he backed out of producing it because he didn't want to take a risk on how racy the script was, you know.
Well, you know, if my friend John can make that film I was talking about,
Yeah.
all these people, you can totally do it. So
Yeah.
don't let anybody get you down.
Oh,
Don't
I'm
listen
not.
to any naysayers. Don't take no for an answer. You know.
Oh, I
You
don't.
just keep going, and you'll find people to back that for sure.
Oh, I don't take no for an answer. And I have this friend Amanda. She's a member of the board at this public access station in the Bay Area, and she wants to be in this pilot like crazy. And you know, we were going back and forth for months at the end of last year to talk about it, and then COVID happened, and I just emailed her last week or 2 weeks ago to see if she still wants to do it. I haven't heard back from her yet, but that's a possibility there, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's incredible, man. That all sounds amazing.
Yeah, because what I want to do is I want to, start off with the public domain horror films, and I want to have female guests on in the world of horror films and stand-up comedy and what have you, you know, and just do these routines, you know, where my alter ego is being a pig and they're making these feministic comebacks and doing it all for the sake of humor, you know. And
Absolutely.
there can be a tagline, where it's like me and all these, different types of horror creatures and stuff, right? And you could say like, the biggest creep of them all is the host or something like that, you know?
Right, right. I totally get that. I like the concept a lot.
Thank you.
Gone.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lot of
I
people.
gotta split off here.
Okay.
It's been incredible talking with you.
It has been amazing talking with you, Kat. And so, yeah, let me know when I can do your podcast. I saw that you have Mike DeStagio coming on.
Mike, that episode was fantastic. Mike was total gem, total gentleman. His show, Real Talk with the Hollywood Kid, is amazing. Just grateful, happy, and I'm so glad there are people like you, like Mike, like Lori, everyone that's kind of, we're doing our part to keep it alive, whether we have our own show or we're helping people with guests or whatever is going on. It's almost like a little family, like a little community of us with the same kind of goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I'm so, so humbled and so grateful. And I'm grateful that, you asked me to be a guest. And I think your show is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. I'm my own worst critic, but if I can...
We all are. The best artists are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but if I can, entertain somebody, that just warms my heart. So I thank you so much for that. And
thank you, man. Hey, you're doing it. You're doing it.
Yes, I am. And so we'll stay in contact. And just let me know. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll get you on my show next. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, awesome.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Well, there you have it. Kat Lively. Ain't she a sweetheart? God, it is always so fucking great to have someone, my age or younger, come on the show and is a historian, and that's very, very rare. So I thank you, Kat, for coming on, and I can't wait to do your show. It's going to be fucking great and inspiring. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Till next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes!